So I want to thank everybody for joining us for our Leader to Leader today, specific to Mavin Solution and how we might use this for attendance, health tracking, symptom tracking, and two-way communications, as well as the EDP requirements that not only were designed for 7th through 12th grade students, but now with many schools looking into virtual and needing to provide an EDP K6 as well, where that is. So thank you for being here. If you can, introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're from, and what are you looking forward to learning about during today's session, or what question do you have coming in? We will be using, because this is a webinar, we will be using the question function to pose questions. And so as we go through the webinar today, we'll be doing a live demo of the tools and resources. So feel free to fire away with questions as we go from there. With me today are colleagues John Kraus from Muskegon Area ISD, who's been instrumental in bringing people together throughout this partnership, and Cy Nike from Maven Holdings. He's not only the chairman and CEO, but he's chief programmer project thing. So the person who's headed up all the programming in the back and the roadmap and everything to go with it are with us. So if you have questions, Cy and John will be able to answer them, what's available now and what might be available or needed in the future as we go through. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, John. Thank you, Cy, for being a part of today's session and supporting educators through this free solution during the pandemic and beyond. So once again, we will use the Q&A function. So after you've introduced yourself in the chat, please do shift over to the Q&A function and add your questions there as we go. We'll have a copy of the slide deck and a recording that will go out to those of you who signed up thereafter. So now that we've done our introductions, we're going to get right into what is Maven. We're going to demo it with questions and then talk about next steps on how to get there. So with that, knowing that people are tight on time and it's a busy time, we're going to get right at it. So Cy, what is Maven and how did this name come about and what are you trying to accomplish?
Yes, thanks, Colin. So yeah, the name Maven is basically an expert based on a collection of knowledge of others. And a big portion of this project is really trying to do what we call equity in education. So how do we make sure that every student, every family is both aware of whether it be career opportunities or just wellness opportunities, tracking, how to make them more aware of resources out there and connected to their schools and connected to their communities and make sure we can scale this so we can make sure that every child is engaged and has an equitable chance for the future. And it was part of our HR strategy as we like to create 10,000 jobs within the next 5 to 10 years at about $70,000 each in agriculture and manufacturing. So we really think it's essential. We want to create an equal opportunity for the jobs we're going to create. And that's why we invested from an HR strategy standpoint to collaborate with all the institutions around the state because our goal is to invest statewide from the UP down to Southeast Michigan to West Michigan. And so that's really the driver behind the project.
So as you work to create 10,000 jobs in Michigan that are offering over $70,000 annually in salary, I know it's important to have a workforce that's there. And what we've been finding is that many students aren't aware of what opportunities exist. Since the pandemic started, I know one of the challenges we faced was around attendance and tracking and two-way communication and engagement. John, can you talk a little bit about, from a school's point of view, what you were working to address through Maven as it relates to that pandemic as a member of the MASSP GELN Task Force for Continuity of Learning? What have you been trying to do and where does that help and fit to today's participants?
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Serving in the role of Director of Instructional Services and then also having the opportunity to serve on the GELN task force that was cranking out the guidance documents and continues to look to develop professional learning to provide to districts across the state. We really became aware of the challenges when in remote learning setting of engaging students. And part of that is around connectivity. And so I know one of the things that Cy will talk about is why this is so critically built for the mobile phone, as well as just engaging students when they're not in your physical presence. And so the ability to create reliable messaging through the mobile phone where students could then see and hear their teacher asynchronously, as well as explore engaging career videos provided by local employers, throughout West Michigan, really throughout Michigan, big companies, small companies, and then react to that. And, in one of the pioneer districts that really got this started was Northview, under the leadership of Mark Thomas as the principal and Scott Korpeck as their superintendent, and Sarah Gammons, who is their lead counselor. And they, really started working on this 5 or 6 years ago. And in the last 2 years, MAISD, has partnered with them, which is neat to have partner schools across boundaries or county lines. And we've, engaged many schools across the state as well as within the Muskegon area. And 2 of the schools, Grant and Northview, really found that as they ramped this up, just in a way to connect with students, they were seeing about 85% engagement of students reliably logging in and consuming and completing the career cards at that point, as well as the messaging that was going out from their counselors. So we believe that this strategy reaches kids where they are, reaches families where they are, is more equitable in terms of being reliant on a mobile phone rather than an internet connection, and always trying to put the highest quality content in front of students. And it really now has evolved into greater functionality that we're going to look at today with the symptom tracking as well as the mental wellness. We're very, very concerned about the mental wellness of students who've lost a lot of opportunity in their identity in school when things like athletics and band and fine arts programs are, are less available or not available at all.
So as we think about that, the parallel I would do is that each day students get notifications, just like if you have Apple News or if you have the Microsoft News, and it provides a daily feed. So the way Maven works is that students have a daily feed from Maven, and that daily feed can include attendance, COVID-19 symptom tracker, announcements, career and college pieces, the EDPs, and then obviously there's other pieces as well. But the focus today is really going to be about that. And as you mentioned, in the districts that were using this during the pandemic, what we found is that the actual habit of students logging in from their phone or mobile devices was what created the habit of feeding it. Just like their Instagram or TikTok or Twitter feeds that they're used to in Snapchat, this allowed them to, on a daily basis, this is just what you do. And because it's asynchronous, it allowed them to do that at any time, anywhere, in any place. And so as a result of that, we've built upon that, partnering with U of M and their Trails program around anxiety and depression, as well as with the county health departments and the CDC to create the daily check-in pieces. And then the EDP is based on the Michigan model for an elementary piece. So without further ado, I'm going to shift from sharing to letting Sai share. And Sai is going to provide a live demo of the tool, followed by John and Sai coming back together to give an idea of what would be next if needed, and interested in getting started with using this for those features.
Great, thanks, Colin. So what I'm going to show first is what the student view is and the student experience. And just for those who are new to the platform, and I think in the past we've shown basically from a career standpoint. So as Colin mentioned, when a student comes to the site, they're going to be able to sign in with their Google account. It's just a quick click, and they are in. And they'll be able to do this from their phone, their Chromebook, their laptop, whichever medium's out there. So what we did and built over the last 2 weeks is basically this new concept. You can switch between users here, but it's this concept of both a daily health screener that, as Colin mentioned, meets the guidelines, and then also a mental health wellness check that we took from the Michigan Trail system. So these are automated cards, very much like the career cards. They're built in out of the box, and they basically enable a user to see them every day. So as Colin mentioned, it's basically a feed, and you can basically subscribe to organizations that you're in and which feed you want to take. So for here, I'm going to go and select my imaginary high school, which I call Detroit High School. And every day these cards generate for what the student has to look at. So the 2 main ones right today we're going to focus on are the daily health screener. So as a student, every day when I come in, it comes out at midnight, and I get this questionnaire. And this was built with Muskegon County Health, Kent County Health guidelines. It's a very simple thing that the student has to go through with just yes or no answers. If the student is from kindergarten to 5th grade, they are able to log in actually, and are the parents able to log in and do it for them in case they can't, they're not of the age to understand what these terms mean and terminology. So what a user does is they have to hit yes or no. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to say, for instance, I do have a fever over 100 degrees, 100.4. For the rest of the questions here, I'm going to go ahead and hit no because I don't have any of these symptoms. And what happens is when I submit this at the end, and I'll hit submit, you'll see that we actually give, based on what the county health departments told us across the state, just some guidelines for what to do. So because here I said I did have a fever over 104, it basically asked me to stay at home, and it gave me some kind of recommendations. This is from the student view. So this is the first card we have them do, which is called the daily health screener. The second card we have is what we call the wellness tracker. So what this does is it was built off of the Trails guideline, but it really just gives an understanding of how does the student feel today. And so what they can do is they have to pick basically one of these faces that can then kind of feel happy or sad or apologetic. And so here I'll just go ahead and say I am happy today. And then what the Trails to Wellness guideline asked for is, can you give them a rating? So right here I'm going to go ahead and say I feel really happy. I'm going to give it 10, and I'm going to hit submit on this as well. And so these are all the activities the student has to do basically to complete their different exercises. And I'm just going to go ahead and submit here. Close this out. So what does this look like from a back end, right? So when a student does this, what does it look like from you as a school? Or if you're a coach, for example, and you have to check before your athletes maybe practice or come to the locker room, you want to say, okay, well, can you show me who is going to be able to show up today, who's not going to show up? So what we have in here is basically a report section. And I think I just kicked myself out of it. Let me go back in. But we have a report section here that the school is able to generate. Get back in here 1 second. There we go. So I'm going to go into my report section here. And I'm going to go select on, click here on MASSP. So now this is me being a counselor or a coach or a user. So what I'm able to see here in my report section, if I click under what's called Split Collective, where the healthcare is this is the daily tracker. So you can see here if it's gray, so when the day starts, everybody starts off as gray. As people complete it, it turns into green. If there's an issue, that means like I had a fever, it'll turn into red. I can actually click on this, and it'll actually then show me how people responded. So if it is red, what the recommendation is. So that way I'll know how many days I may or may not be in school, or that student might not be in school. This is available also for the staff, not just the students. So you can have other teachers, administrators, coaches taking it as well. We were working with some of the athletic directors across some of the schools, and they told us that part of the requirement is making sure that even your coaches see this or are able to do that, and the athletic director can monitor everybody. This is accessible on the phone. So one of the keys too is, let's say you get to the practice field or the school building and a student hasn't logged in, you can ask them just to whip up their phone and do that card right on their feed, and it'll reflect right there. As a school, you're going to be able to search as well. So let's say you had hundreds of students. We already have schools using this for their athletics and their sports. You're able to drill down. So if I want to see, for example, John, I can just type in John. Now I can see all the Johns in the system. So you can type in, it can filter, and you can see the days. Then you can also basically run the reports by week. So let's say I went back a week and hit run report. Well, we didn't start this. You can see it's empty. Then if I go to this week and I hit run report, you can basically see everybody's in there. Again, I can remove my filter and see all the users. So this allows the school to really monitor, to understand, who's well, who's met the health screener, who has not, what the issues could be, and what that would mean in terms of showing up or not. And then you have what we call the emotional tracker. The last piece that I'm going to show
before we go further, Si, just to take a break for a moment. So one of the things that we're expected to do is to make sure that we have daily attendance. So one way to keep track of attendance is simply by having students select the emoji that best represents how they were feeling that day. A second way you can do attendance, if you choose to do so, is through the symptom tracker, so you know they're checking in from that end. Knowing that the MHSAA requires any day that a team is going to meet and or a coach is going to interact with their athletes, they must complete and document the daily symptoms. And what was pushed out through the MHSAA was a template that schools could use, but it was a paper template that required the coach to jot down or write down every name of their athlete and keep track of their responses manually on a daily basis. So the thinking behind this in partnership with the MIAAA, with the athletic directors and stuff, was saying, how can we actually automate this so that people who are logging in can do that and a coach doesn't have to actually be documenting on paper. And so by doing this, each user, so if I'm an administrator or counselor, I can see everybody. If I'm a teacher or a coach, I can only see my students that are assigned to me. And so as a coach, I'm able to say day to day who's checked in and who's not. So before practices start, I can look at who's still in the gray and I can address that. If I see people who are in the red, they need not be at practice, or I need to adjust or figure out why they did show up, so that I know day to day who can be there because they're in the green.
Great. So those are basically at a high level what we call the wellness checker from a mental health standpoint, and then the daily health screener. Then the next requirement that came out because of the crisis was, and Colin will be able to explain it better, but the necessity to have an EDP that is digitized, especially for K through 6. And so as part of that, what you'll see is as I go into the system here and I've got my different users that I'm connected with, I can literally go in and click. So let's say, for example, I'm going to click on John Kraus. And when I click on John, what I'm going to have inside of here is an evaluation. So this is again from my counselor's view or my teacher's view. So a counselor and teacher can basically work with the student then to develop an electronic EDP. And so to do that, what they'll say is maybe this is the EDP for fall 2020. And then what we first do is we've tried to tie in what we call employability skills. Ottawa Area ISD, led by Jason Pacetta, have been working on what they call a scaffolding framework of soft skills that students should be developing at every grade level. So based on where your school building is, we'll have these employability skills as part of the EDP. So that way, as they're filling it out, they have that evaluation. So for here, we picked 4, but again, it can be really customized, or it can be customized to the PBIS that your school uses. But we think that's really an important part of the EDP process, along with looking at the career cards and the college cards and the expiration. And so then what the counselor and the student do is they fill out basically these questions, right? And we basically took them as initial kind of guidelines to make sure we meet things, but kind of what is the area of desired focus for the student? So for example, we could say they love math, right? Describe the interests, and maybe they say they want to go into computers, you know, and then we can say, what is the timeline area? So of course, I just write code. I'm not an educator, and I follow the guideline from John and Colin. So these responses are probably not great. I'll just put 6 months. And then what's the kind of secondary goals? And I'll say to become Bill Gates. But you get the general understanding of how you can actually fill this out. And then I can hit here, create. And so what this does is it gets stored away on the student's Scribe profile. And so this stays with them. The thing with how we designed Maven, from the guidance from Colin and John and so many of the educators, was we want a talent profile that the student can have forever. That if somebody says, hey, I want to check out your EDP from last year or 6 months or 2 years from now, it literally stacks up and it's literally building these skills. So you can always go back then and view the report. And again, this is from the teacher counselor view. So whether you're a K-5 as a teacher or counselor, can do this. This is also available for middle schoolers, high schoolers as well. And what we have is it's tied to this goals section. So if you do that daily activity that we've shown in the past with the careers and colleges and the cards, as that populates up, as you're writing these evaluations, you can look at it and actually see what goals, what things did my students explore, what did they like or dislike as you put that together. From a student's view and standpoint, and I'll show you that real quickly. If I was a student and I go to my records section, what you'll see here is I can then see evaluations. So I can see here's this EDP evaluation somebody did for me, or that we did together. And what we're building is an approval process that the student can approve it as well. And both those approvals and that will then constitute as the signatures for both basic parties. And so I'll let Colin probably explain more of the guidelines behind why the kind of short EDP is needed in the time frame for going online. But that's how it functionally is going to work. And Colin, maybe I'll just turn it back to you to explain that if I missed anything on that.
So in order to do an EDP, there's nothing in the state requirements about what an EDP requires, But in the state document that was out there, it did have these 4 questions that they thought should be asked of students, whether they're elementary or secondary. So the idea is, well, what are some things that are some areas of strengths or needs? So it could be as simple as just having students in the first one indicate what are some things they do well. So I'm really good with my math, facts, and spelling. I struggle with problem solving or texts that require or problems that require reading of text. The next one is around that personal social development. So what are some things you're interested in? I like to walk my dogs. I like to play Fortnite. I like to play on the travel baseball team, whatever that type is. So that's bringing in the interest, depending on whether it's a kindergarten, obviously, or somebody in later or early middle school. And then what are some things that you'd like to improve on during that time? And how might you be able to do that? So I'd like to, by the end of this year, be really good at this. And so that's the piece there. From there, then, when it comes to the post-secondary goals and career goals, it might be, what are some things you want to do in high school or college? What are some things you might want to do when you grow up? So these can be very generic, or it could be, I want to be Kobe Bryant or Bill Gates or whoever that might be is listed here. So it's just a general, simple piece. And just even if they only put in a few words or comments, this actually is all that's needed from that piece. So what happens then is this gets everybody up and running. So if I'm a principal still and I'm at the elementary or the middle level, I can have my teachers either as part of their back to school time in getting to know students. So as we're doing infant inventories or some type of welcome and connecting and building our sense of community, this can be something I put into it. The other one that we're seeing people use this for is that for doing virtual open houses that parents are hosting for their parents. They're actually introducing this to their parents, these virtual open houses, and they're having their students go into Maven with their student and complete this together. So essentially it's creating this as a profile, if you will, just like when I was an elementary teacher at the beginning of the year, there was some things that I talked to my students about at the beginning of the year to get to know them so I can design instruction. From this then, once they have this, that fulfills, if you will, the checking the box of an EDP. From there then, on a daily basis, there's a feed in that card where students are able to adapt or are able to consume some content about some college and career opportunities for them. And so when they go into that, they're able, so if you go to the MidMichigan Health, this one came out of University of Michigan. You'll notice here, if this is something that they say, hey, I might want to work in healthcare, I can click on that plus button and it makes it a check. When I do that, that's adding to my EDP in my talent portfolio. So there's both video and text. So if I'm a younger child, I might be using the video. If I'm an older middle-aged student or high school student, I might do video and text, but it talks about some of the jobs and careers that are available there. And then from there, they can explore some of the credentials that are needed, the technology or tools that are there, and what the qualifications are. And as students go through this and they indicate where they are, this can be a day-to-day way for them to build their talent profile, and it builds to that. And so as a student, I'm able to go to my goals and I can see where those things, so a company I might be interested in, Michigan Health. A product I might want to do is pediatric care. The industry is in there. So it's building the required talent profile that technically in Michigan isn't required until you start in high school or in the secondary level, but they can even start as early as elementary, and this starts to build. The other part of this is it's portable. So when a student, if they're in your school or go to another school, this can go with as long as that school is using it. So when students' emails connect to this, when they go to a new one and they have a new email, it goes from that to the next. So essentially it's building that part of the EDP as you go, knowing that by design, the EDP for particularly K-6 isn't even underway. And for most of your 7th graders, that's probably something you do sometime in 7th grade, oftentimes towards the end of the 2nd try or 3rd trimester. or second semester in preparation for scheduling for 8th grade. So this is a way to get students to having an EDP and being able to see that. So as a counselor, as a principal, as a teacher, I can see this for my students. And so that fits that EDP piece of the requirements. John, do you want to add to that at all?
I want to go back. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A, not specifically on the EDP, but I'd like to address. One was around the screener, the wellness daily check-in. And it really is important that if you as a school turn that on, you have a system to monitor and personnel, so whether it be the classroom teacher, which that may be a lot, or your MTSS team, or maybe you're partnered with a mental health provider or clinician through 31N. It's really important that that data be monitored, especially the mental health data. The other piece, there was a question about, can you customize or add questions? And Si, I'm wondering if I can grab the screen share for a second.
And just to show everybody though, John, before I show that, so this is where you can turn them on and off. So we have that ability. It doesn't generate from your school by default. You can turn on that daily screener and you can turn it off. Same for the wellness check. So I'll stop sharing, John. Good.
Yeah, so one of the other pieces that Si and his team are working on are digitizing also from Trails, this instrument, which is appropriate for, I believe, 6th through 12th grade. There may be some others, but part of the strongly recommended requirements in the return to school roadmap is to conduct a mental health screener, ideally before school. And again, as I mentioned in the early part, we know the current conditions are really hard on kids that may not otherwise have shown up on a radar. So this is a research-based screener, free, and is being built then that could be deployed on the frequency that whatever the school would like to. If it's a one-time piece, we wouldn't recommend that. The roadmap recommends that there's some regular frequency of deeper mental health and just the feeling for the day. And this also has with it then a scoring rubric. So whether it's your counselors or your social workers, they have some sense of what is starting to represent a risk factor or a high risk factor and may need to get other care providers involved. There's always the ability to build your own content. That's a different level and kind of a different training. So if you want to build your own questions and cards or personalized messages, that capability is there. But these are the tools that would be automatically developed and built into the system. And the last piece I want to address, and I want to ask Si to address this a little bit deeper, of why is this free? And is this a gimmick in the sense of you're going to, start it out free and then, there's add-on purchases or later, there's a cost. This is very, very much about equity in education and really taking charge of not partnering with a vendor, but partnering with a private institution who has the same interest that we do, and that they're not trying to capitalize and get school dollars for a software solution. We pay a lot of money for software. Si has had incredible success in the private sector with his company, which is a global company in writing business applications and enterprise software. And their goal, because they've acquired a fair amount of capital, is to turn that capital into investments into other sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and energy, specifically in the Midwest, and really focusing on Michigan. And so that's why, we've really invested with Si. MAISD has not paid a dime, neither has Northview or Grant or any of the schools, because we're the ones that are contributing the content. As he said, he's the coder and we're the educational experts. And so this is why it's a true public partner or a public-private partnership. But Si, do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah,
more?
I mean, like I said, I think our challenge is we've wanted to grow even faster, right? And I'm thrilled at where this project is going. And that's in all parts of communities. But when I go and I talk to people about agri-health e-commerce, they ask me, well, what's that? The sad thing is that the only free resources out there were ONET. Well, I appreciate ONET. ONET looks at what was done, not where things are going. And so when I'm looking at this next generation of students who are in middle school and high school, I don't need them to look at what happened. I need them to know what's going to happen. And that's what we're going to dictate. And that's the way Silicon Valley operates. That's the way Amazon operates. And if we're going to compete with Amazon, or we're going to compete with Mahindra Tech, or we're going to compete with any of these companies, we had to get that information out. So that was number one. Number two is I'm really proud. We're a minority-owned business. I own 100% of it. And I sit on national minority and diversity councils. And so part of being a minority-owned business is giving back. I'm so disappointed in how lack of diversity there is in agriculture, how many people are forgetting about our agro communities across the state, how little minority representation there is in there. And so when we talk about these sectors like agro-health e-commerce, which will be the convergence of population precision food, we talk about MU3, MU4, and healthcare. I think it's so vital that we're getting that information out to all the families of here's what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And companies like mine will dictate that. We're going to be opening up these new sectors and jobs. And if you start saying to students, what do you want to do today? And they say a job that existed last year, I always liken to where the economy is going to of think if you were about 10 years ago and maybe the postal service, right? It would have been helpful to know how much email was going to grow. And so that's what I get concerned about, which is when students are looking, do they know where it's going to go? Number two, I talk about criteria. Again, I really appreciate ONET. I appreciate the fact it's free by the government, but here's the problem. It takes a national data pool. So when we're employing regionally, I might not need a bachelor's degree, but in San Francisco, they will. But now what's happened is the student has gone ahead, gotten a bachelor's degree because that's what ONET said, or this National Career Explorer thing has said. They've run up a debt. Their salary range is way out of the geographic area. It's just a lose-lose for everybody. So we have to start getting pathways that were being more realistic for the employers locally. And I don't think we're the only employer that felt this way. And we just got tired of sitting around. Like, if we're going to grow in Michigan, let's just put our money where our mouth is. And it's like I said, I've dedicated 25 people on our staff who've been just working 24 hours a day to this project. And then the effortless, tireless work from MASSP and Colin putting the PD together, MAISD, career specialists going. It's a true partnership. Like I said, we just write the code, but what I just did not want to do is we can't afford to wait any longer. Amazon's going. The digital economy is here. I still think Michigan, I'm betting on Michigan, I'm betting on the Midwest. I think it's the heartbeat of this country and the globe. And I think if we can just get a catalyst going, it's going to have a great effect. So that's really the driver behind the project. As I've gotten to know, I have a 1.0 knowledge of education or first grade level. Colin and John are far more versed, but the things that I think from an employer standpoint, whole child, so vitally important. I think so many people make a mistake of education. I think it's just learning. It's part of it. If we don't develop the right eating habits, the right mental habits, the right work ethic, they will not be able to compete in the global economy with the workforce here. So that's really the driver behind the project. For me, success is, can I drive around Michigan in 5 or 10 years from now and go to both rural and urban communities, suburban communities, see new factories, new jobs, new production, better GSP, better GDP, better innovation? Can we move to agri-health e-commerce? Can we reduce the Affordable Exchange Acts, get better test scores? That's what it's about. And can every single mother who's an Alice mother get there? So
the short answer is this: it's free now and it's free later. There is no gimmick. There is no what's coming next. This is a project that's growing, and that's why MASSP, MAISD, and others have joined into it. So essentially, it started out around career and college exploration, which fit into the EDP piece and that's when we became involved because of the new requirements that started last year for EDPs and the talent profile. So this was a pre-solution. The second part is about future, not just the past, and it's about Michigan jobs and opportunities, not just things that are available on each of the coasts. So it's from that end, it addresses that. The other part, though, is I think just going back to where some people are really struggling has to do with attendance and pupil accounting. And Jeff Bowles raised this question earlier, and I think it's something that is important. I don't want to have overstated. And that is, right now, if you're in a face-to-face, obviously you're doing face-to-face, and you're likely doing attendance within the classroom on a day-to-day basis. But we also know that there's a lot of hybrid going on, and some people are doing their hybrid approach where it's synchronous and not asynchronous, and others who are doing remote asynchronously. And so the first part of this is just checking in how you're feeling is not only an inclusion activity, but it's a formative assessment for the teacher, particularly for students who aren't coming face-to-face. You can't see their face when they're walking through the door. So from a social emotional piece and that whole child, it's important to be able to know where they are. So one, it's a way of checking in that student was present or engaged at least for a portion of that day and where they are. The second part of that then is the two-way communication. And so know that two-way communication is required for the virtual, the distance. So if over 50% of a student's time for a course is being done through a virtual, the daily attendance piece isn't as critical as the two-way communication. Although the daily attendance is one way to do that with the count day factors, I'm not going to get into all the weeds on that. There is a requirement for two-way communication. And that two-way communication has to be specific to that student. And it can't be just a message board or a Twitter feed or a chat room or whatever else. So in the solution, the students are able to do that. And then there can be a reflection question. And that reflection question, then they mentor, or whoever's assigned to that student, whether that's a counselor, a principal, or the teacher mentor for that, once a week would need to go in there and respond to that student to communicate with them about either how they're feeling, how they're progressing with their academics. So that's the current, based on pre-pandemic, what you had to do. Know that MASSP is working with legislators and MDE to work on simplifying and streamlining the pupil accounting process for this coming school year. We believe that there's going to be an agreement around that might come out on Saturday as part of the Senate's work that's in their session there. But this is a way to document within here that two-way communication. So think about, there's three things we're trying to triangulate. One is the social emotional about how I'm feeling. Second, the symptom tracking that we're expected to do or strongly recommended to do based on the CDC and the health department. And then the third is of the requirement that schools provide some type of anxiety and depression screening as a health screening, at least minimum to start the school year. And by partnering with the University of Michigan's Trails program, we're able to digitize that. And by doing it in a digital way, schools now have the analytics to be able to manipulate the data in a way that they can access and target who they need in order to do that. So in doing so, it addresses the attendance, it addresses the mental health, full child piece, and it addresses the EDP component to get started. Then by getting kids in the habit, if this is something you continue to do, whether now in the pandemic or thereafter, students are having a daily feed where each and every day they can learn about a different career, like I said, whether it's agriculture, industry, healthcare, technology, whatever that is, learn about that and determine whether or not that's something they're interested in. So EDPs and career exploration goes from a one-day or a week-long event or project within a class to a day-to-day interaction, just like their interactions on TikTok, Snapchat, or whatever that is. By building in such a way that EDP is dynamic and evolving, and our teachers and our counselors are able to see that to be able to tie from that. And then the last piece, obviously, is then with the trails. When we think about MTSS and being able to service the whole child, what data points do we have? And so in partnership with U of M, by putting this screener in here and then connecting you. So the one part that's not free, which isn't Maven, but University of Michigan has their curriculum. So that is a paid service. So if you want their professional development that goes with their end of the programming, that is a paid service, not to us, but to U of M to partner with. I know Washington County uses it. I've spoken to several others in Saginaw and Genesee County recently that have adopted it. But that curriculum comes, but what Maven then provides is a user interface so that rather than you by hand having to manipulate or aggregate data, you're able to do it with a click of a button within the tool in order to do it. So that's where those three pieces come together around attendance, anxiety, depression, health screening, and the EDPs from that end. So I think that addresses piece. The other piece is Stephanie raised the question around feeling depressed or aggressive in that. So the feelings piece is actually trademarked from the University of Michigan. So that one alone isn't adjustable. However, you can, Stephanie or anybody else, create your own screener in there. And so we have some examples that you could connect with if you want something that's a little bit simpler and easier to access from that end.
And Colin, I'll just add to that too. We took it right from a team from University of Michigan because they had some of the best psychologists and folks working on the project. They have so when the students answer these responses, there's intervention techniques schools can use. So we really just followed it to a T. And if people have to change it, we'll say that's, as Colin said, right? You can do something custom, but we just wanted to create a full turnkey for schools, and Michigan has really validated this out. So we literally took the faces you see here, if you actually go to that Trails website, you'll see it looks exactly 100% the same. So we have not modified it at all. So
There was a question in the chat about the website for Maven. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about your presence and where and how people can get more information, because the site that we'll give will be the login screen, and we can walk you through. In fact, Colin's got some information on his website about the process of creating pre-connections for your students with their Google.
So the site that you're going to access stuff is www.maven.cloud. Again, this is a project; it's not a product. So we volunteered to write the code of it, but we're not. Like I said, we're not doing any marketing. So you're not going to find any glitzy social media account reps. Getting boots at the conventions. We're avoiding all of that. So www.maven.cloud is where you can access this. We're going to have training coming up, which is what Colin has on the screen, of how to get your buildings into the portal, how to connect your students with CSV. We now can connect through CSV with all the major SIS systems. If you want to go to the level of API integration, we can do that as well. So that'd be Synergy, Skyward, PowerSchool, Infinite Campus, all those platforms. We also have APIs into a lot of the LMS systems as well. So, but yeah, Maven.cloud, www.maven.cloud is the site. You can sign in with your school Gmail or Microsoft accounts. It'll get you right in there. Like I said, once you just create a new account and go in. But we're going to have more instructions, and Colin has it up on his screen of what people can follow. And then we also have a lot of toolkits in areas like that. Also, number two, just make people aware of, if your employer, it's free for employers as well. So any business, large or small, can jump into the platform. And if you're going to get in here and you're like, well, a lot of the cards don't seem localized to my community, connect with Colin, connect with John Kraus. The MASD career specialists have been sharing what they've been doing to get your local businesses in there. So that way, if your kids are doing career exploration, it can be more local to you, whatever part of the state you are. But even for the businesses, it's free and always will be free. And I'll turn to you, Colin. We've got the training up there on the screen.
So one of the things that was important to us as an association is how do we ensure that our principals have high quality content that they can trust and depend on. And so when we got into this project, that's really where we were looking at is how does that work. And so our support of this is not only around providing guidance, but also around helping to deploy this. And so if you go to massp.com/Maven, there's more information about the Maven solution. We're not here to sell you on something as much as just allowing you to know about a flexible option that is free that can address some of the common problems that we've been fielding at MASSP specific to pupil accounting and mental health. And so when you go to this website, you're going to notice you come to the landing page. And anybody with this site that doesn't require a login, you're going to see on the left-hand side the menu of options from getting started to then the sub-bullets are different courses you can take. Every single course is free. Each course will designate what it is that you need to do during the course and how to get up and running. Every course has been applied and approved for sketchies through the Michigan Department of Education. So both administrators, teachers, and counselors will get sketchies for participating in this training and able to up and run it. So if there's something there, we're talking about today just those auto-generated ones. So I'm going to go to our website just to show you that interface for just a minute.
And Colin, if I can add, we also have developed a battery of communication tools, so template letters for both chambers of commerce, the school community, parents. So in what we hope and believe is parent-friendly language and introduction of what this is, to try to take that burden off of the school community in terms of introducing it to your students and your parents.
So there's several things you can do. One is just getting started, what it's about, and how to get started there. So when I click on the getting started, it actually tells me what do I need to do to launch. So it's as simple as provide us a spreadsheet, a CSV file that includes a student email, their 9-digit UIC code, the graduation year, and who their assigned counselors. So you just repeat those pieces. And so through email, it integrates just like every other social media platform that you would go to. Think of this as your educational media platform. So by providing us that, we're able to load this, and that's the only thing you would need to do at that point. If you want to include other people beyond that, so your administrators, teachers, counselors, all we need is their school email and what their role is. So some people might be a teacher and a coach. We just know what their primary role is, and then we can manually add secondary roles. But it would just be simply doing that. Once you upload the file, The only other thing you have to do then is you can go through and learn about how to utilize it. So we have free PD, as I said before. And so when you go to the PD, it's really simple. It tells you what you need to do, what you're going to do, and then upon completion, how you get there. All you have to do now is click here to start, and it launches the PD for you. So for each of the professional developments that we have available, all of the PD is free and available right from our website. All you have to do is click on here's the intro, overview, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, you complete the task, you get your sketches. And so it walks you through for each of those from our webinar. So when you're getting started, in order to launch this in your school district, you or your counselor or somebody from your district would need to be able to provide us a CSV file. For students, it's 4 columns. For staff, it's 2 columns. You can do training to the extent possible. The only training you really have to do is for you and or a counselor, just so you know how it works and more detail. And then communicate to students and families what you want to do. So as John said, we have a sample letter. It does require you to make a copy. So when you do make a copy, it adds it to yours. And then you can customize it to fit to where you are. So it can include as much or as little as you want from that end. From there, you're ready, you're up and running to go. John, Cy, myself are available to people to support you, as well as other principals, counselors, and teachers who are using this. So if you're looking for a free tool that's both sustainable and builds habits of students logging in that can fulfill your attendance requirements, your mental health screening requirements, your COVID-19 symptom tracking strongly recommended, and the EDP and career exploration piece, you can do that through this auto-generated piece. It's accessible through 2G. It's accessible through 3G, digital satellite, and we have apps. We're just waiting on Apple to do the final approval there, but we'll have apps for for Apple devices, for Chrome devices, for Android.
Yep, Android, yep.
Android and desktop. Is that?
Yeah, so Windows, OS 10, and Linux and PC. So any of the different.
The benefit of that then is that when students don't have internet connectivity, they can still, when they are on connectivity, they can launch their app. Everything downloads to the app. When they're off connectivity, they can work offline and then access again. So it's just a way of doing that. So today our focus was around providing you with an overview of how you could use this tool for free. Down the road, if it's something you would want to do more with, we can talk about other integrations, but from announcements and that you can send out as coaches in there. But the simplest automated way to deploy this after you do those couple of CSV files is truly around daily attendance, COVID screening, the trails assessment as needed, and the career and college exploration for the EDPs.
Colin, if I could just, there was a question in the chat about how long does it take to get trained and up and running? And there's obviously a lot of options there. I would say that, through the principal and probably a lead counselor and, perhaps an attendance secretary, it doesn't even have to involve a teacher at this point. And so it's a small group that could go through that training. I would say it would probably, to go through the video modules, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. Somebody would need to prepare that CSV upload, which doesn't take very long if they can pull it from their SIS. And Cy is going to answer the question about integration with the different SISs. But it's a pretty light lift with the letter. And if you're going to use it from the standpoint of the auto-deployed functions, which are the career cards, the college cards, the health tracker, the wellness tracker. You get into some more of the content building, it's going to take more training, but it's a pretty light.
John, just to answer that too, we've now just done 8 school districts I've connected with in the last 2 days. It's taken each of us about 20 minutes to create their buildings for the entire district, upload their CSV, 20 minutes. So less than half an hour, they're up and running because it's just Google sign in. They're watching their kids all get in. I'll give you an example. Northview, which actually did their athletics starting on Monday, all their athletes in there. We had a whole thing done in 20 minutes. And so it's become that light of a lift. And like I said, we tried to make it as intuitive as possible and easy as possible. And as Colin mentioned, if we can help please let us know. But yeah, we're excited about how much easier it's become to get in there. And for those who are on the platform prior, I just want to make this note too. Some have been in the Maven project for many years, or last year or year before. The platform has substantially changed. So if you actually go to it, you'll actually create brand new logins and new authentications. So the system has drastically changed. So the old platform is actually at legacy.maven.cloud. So if we have anybody who's been with us in the past, just know that you're kind of starting anew now, but the one that we're starting with now will be there forever. But it was partly because we wanted to make the process way simpler than what it used to be.
So just to clarify what John said too about the professional development, that's if like you do the whole PD part that goes with it. So if you want to learn about how it can do more than just even what we're talking about now, specific to it, that's where it comes. So the first introductory video that gives you an overview of everything, 32 minutes. And then there's, if you want the sketches, you have to do 3 different cards. So you have to pretend to be a student to do a career card, or you have to do the check-in as a student, the symptom tracker, a career card, a college card, and reflect on how you might use it. So that when John's saying an hour and a half, it includes all of that pieces. The next piece, as far as what Sai said, 20 minutes essentially to upload. It took essentially schools that had no information, about 20 minutes with one of us on a webinar, just walking through whoever your person was and the entities created and up and running. So this isn't, as you said, a heavy lift. And then from there, there's more robust professional development for those who are looking to do assignments or announcements and other things. But for this basic part, you can be up and running in a matter of hours, and wouldn't even be sustained hours for you.
And then, John, what's the question on the SIS? You mentioned, I didn't see the question.
There was a question about just interfacing with specifically Synergy or other SISs. And so
a couple of things around that. So number one is CSV, we just generate to get going. And then what happens is there's, as Colin mentioned, there's more places where you can actually start adding courses, connecting courses to career opportunities for EDP planning. And so there's 2 routes you can do. We can still do a CSV extract, or you can actually do a linkage with API integrations to the Maven platform and yours. Just know there's some platforms like Skyward that have a charge if you use their API services, so you'll have to look at your contract on that. There's another thing now called Class Roster and Class Sync from IMS Global that a lot of people have been using, and so that we can integrate in as well. So there's different options there, but again, none of that, that's when you're starting to get more advanced. So you're looking at doing the assignment cards and STEM cards and going deeper. The CSV will be sufficient for all these automated tools. Just a one-time sync and you'll be set to go. Another thing just to mention to everybody as well is parents can actually create accounts as well. So long as they have a Google, Microsoft, Apple, or Yahoo account email, they can actually access the system. And if their workplace is on Office 365 or G Suite, they can access as well. When they log in, they have to put their children's email address in, and that will connect them. The child will have to confirm and approve the parent connection. The reason we did that is, let's say they run into an abused household situation or foster situation, you, the school, can always log in as a student because you know their email and disconnect the parent. So this way we give the student that level and layer of protection. But that will allow you, the district, to basically email and communicate to the parent directly as well on behalf of the child if you need to give them any extra information. So that exists as well, that's out there.
Yeah, one other point to make around the integration, that the health tracker and the for both the mental wellness as well as the physical, those are just completion and attendance. They do not count towards a student's what we call their fundamental 4 score. When they start engaging in the career cards and the college cards, their completion of those activities starts building towards a record of their attendance, their comprehension, collaboration, and productivity. And what we found is it's essential that, unfortunately, we've conditioned kids, they only do things for points. Hopefully they'll see the value in this, but if it's going to be integrated as an expectation, we would recommend that some percentage of probably an ELA class, because it is a listening comprehension, reading comprehension, and there is some written feedback at times that students are providing, would be maybe a suitable 5% of the score that, and it's an automated score that comes out of the Maven system, be integrated, because that was enough to incentivize the students in the pilot groups to want to engage and complete the career and college cards. It only takes generally about 4 to 5 minutes per day. Sometimes there may be multiple videos. And again, they're presented with a comprehension question, which is in the form of a quiz, and then the collaborative feedback, and that completes their.
And John, to speak to that, yeah, and we can. That's where the SIS comes in, because we can push those grades back into that grade book at a line item level. So the teacher, literally, if they say just do it as a homework assignment every day. Go in, do your health screener, do your feelings emotion card, do your anxiety screening, do the college and career card. If you make it as part of just the daily exercise, even if there's a snow day, a storm, get used to going on your phone and doing it like you look at Instagram and TikTok, and then it'll just automatically get auto scored and it gets pushed into that grade book. And so then it really doesn't disrupt any class time. But like I said, what you're getting out of it is not only the whole child development, but career development as well, and stronger EDPs and comprehension. So
there was
my last question comes from Mike Miller around the FERPA and HIPAA compliance. So John, you want to hit that?
Yeah, we were very cognizant. SI is overly, I wouldn't say overly, but very, very conscientious of security, almost to a fault, and has turned down some requests and things of data integration of other systems. And so his legal team has reviewed all of the COPPA and I'm probably missing the other one, SIPA standards, as well as FERPA, around how the data is handled. We've also been engaged with those who are part of the data hub. So out of Ottawa Area ISD, their director or associate superintendent for technology has given us some great feedback on how to be compliant with those pieces.
Yeah, and John, just to add to that, so you'll notice these things like split collective Combi, and you might be like, what does that mean? We purposely broke these stuff into different apps. So think of like the G Suite, how they have docs and sheets and slides, because what we knew is that there's going to be different permission levels for different apps. So we're talking about things like S2B, that's an education app, which is COPPA and FERPA. But when you talk about things like Split Collective and Combi, which are those apps, those are healthcare, which is what's called HIMSS, Health Information System Management, and HL7, which is what the MU4 for the Affordable Health Care Act is really built on when it got from MU1, 2, 3, 4. So when you look at a Split Collective, we built it on HL7 standards, which go beyond HIPAA, because basically that's where we had the different two-form authentication. So what does that mean in a nutshell? So if you clicked on the Maven.cloud, what you'll notice, like, go to your Gmail account, you see how you automatically log in, you can see your email. Or if you go to your phone and you open up a G app or something like that, you'll go right in. But if you ever go to a banking app, for example, you notice that they always make you log in every time. So you notice with Maven now, we make you do the same thing too. When you hit it, you go to that home page, you're always going to have to log in. It doesn't automatically show you the data. And part of that was just following the guidelines of HL7 and HIMSS. And like I said, we've been taking it from a standpoint of MU4. So eventually, if healthcare systems do want to do direct connects, or you have psychological counseling, you can tie it in or do chip enrollment or anything like that. So we tried to go above and beyond and really look at where healthcare is going and where HIPAA is going for patient information rights and access to that. So.
All right, so we want to thank people for joining us today. And if you'd like to know more, you are free to reach out to John, Cy, or I. We will follow up with an email to you for additional information. But thank you for your time. We wish you well as you kick off this new school year.